Deep in the heart of an ancient forest lived a young warrior named Kale. He had spent years honing his skills in combat and survival but longed to master a skill that few dared to even attempt. It was known as the shadow technique, a mystical ability that allowed one to move unseen, strike silently, and vanish without a trace. Legend spoke of warriors who had become invincible after mastering this technique, blending into the darkness like whispers of the wind. Kale sought out Silas, an enigmatic figure known as the last living master of the shadow technique. Silas was a man who seemed to defy nature itself. He moved without sound, his presence barely perceptible even when standing close. Kale was determined to learn from him, no matter the cost. Silas agreed to train Kale but warned him that the path would not be easy. The training was not just physical but deeply mental. To master the shadow technique, Silas said one quiet evening, "You must first master yourself. Fear, doubt, and anger are greater enemies than any opponent you will face. The shadows are not a hiding place. They are an extension of who you are." The training began at dawn each day and lasted until the moon rose high in the sky. Kale practiced moving silently, leaping from tree to tree without disturbing a single branch. He learned to align his movements with the natural sounds of the forest, the rustle of leaves, the call of birds, and the whispers of the wind. At night, he meditated under the stars, calming his mind and focusing his senses until he could hear the faintest crackle of a twig or feel the presence of a creature nearby. After months of relentless training, Silas gave Kale his final test. One evening, under the light of a crescent moon, Silas led Kale to a clearing deep within the forest. In the center stood a single lantern, its tiny flame flickering softly in the dark. Surrounding the lantern were several guards, skilled hunters known for their sharp senses. Silas turned to Kale and spoke in a low voice. "Retrieve the lantern without being seen or heard. If you succeed, the shadow technique will be yours." Kale nodded, his heart steady and his determination firm. He approached the clearing with the utmost caution, his breathing slow and controlled. He studied the movements of the guards, noting their patterns and moments of distraction. Moving with the rhythm of the forest, Kale crept forward. Each step was carefully timed with the rustling of leaves or the swaying of branches. When he reached the lantern, Kale paused. The flame inside was small but bright, casting long shadows on the ground. He reached out slowly and cupped his hands around the glass. With one soft breath, he extinguished the flame. The clearing was plunged into darkness. As Kale turned to leave, a voice broke the silence. "Who's there?" one of the guards called out, his tone sharp and alert. Kale froze but did not panic. He closed his eyes and became still, letting the darkness envelop him. The guard moved closer, his eyes scanning the shadows, but he saw nothing. Kale blended seamlessly with the night, his presence undetectable. When the guard turned away, Kale continued his silent retreat, disappearing into the forest without a trace. Before dawn, Kale returned to Silas, the extinguished lantern in his hands. Silas looked at him with a rare smile, his eyes gleaming with approval. "You have done well," Silas said. "You are no longer merely a warrior. You are one with the shadows. The technique is now yours." From that day forward, Kale became a legend. He was known as a protector of the innocent, a shadow that moved silently through the night. To those who did wrong, he was a figure of fear, appearing without warning and vanishing just as quickly. His name was spoken in hushed tones, a symbol of justice and mystery that would echo through the ages.